I love that song, Mom. Sing it again.
No, honey, Mommy's gotta save her throat. I have to work tonight.
Okay.
By being
What it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD. Now, one of my favorite characters on South Park is Cartman's mother. She's pretty much the female quagmire of the show. With that being said, today we're here to check out a video called The Tragedy of Cartman's Mom. Now, I don't know what they're going to talk about, but I hope it's quagmire activities. Let's do this.
I baked cookies. Would anybody like one?
I wouldn't mind getting a hold of your cookies, Miss Cartman.
Well, go right ahead, Officer Barb Brady.
That's a good cookie.
Look, I know she's kind of a hoe, but is it just me or is Cartman's mom the nicest person in all of South Park? I mean, she's friendly, she's caring, she's helpful, she always has a plate of cookies on her, and in general, she just has this gentle quality about her that stands out amongst the other adults in town. Mostly because they're all giant assholes, but also because she's really just that nice. But even though Leanne is a really nice person, it's also true that she's a terrible mother. And I could point out the specific reasons for why, but just look at Eric. He's an abomination. Do you see how terrible he is? Do you see?
Oh, God! Yes, I see!
Eric is kind of like the villain of South Park. He's a maniacal psychopath that will stop at nothing to get his way, even if it means seriously hurting people. And because Leanne is the mother that raised him, it's her fault that the town has to deal with his extremely destructive behavior, which means that Leanne Cartman has arguably been one of the worst influences on the town of South Park. But here's the thing. Over the 25 plus years that the show has been running, her parenting abilities have slowly improved. And as of recently, she's progressed to the point of becoming the exact mother that Eric has always needed. One who will love him, but will also stand up to him and force him to suffer the consequences of his actions. And so with that in mind, the question I want to ask you today is, does Leanne Cartman deserve to be redeemed? Or does the impact she's had on the town through her initially bad parenting make that impossible? And I know we both know that I'm just framing this as a question because I'm trying to segue out of this intro somehow, so save your comments for later. No wait, actually, more engagement never hurts. Scratch that. Comment as much as possible, especially if you have something stupid to say, because I think that there is an answer to that question. And in my opinion, it hinges on Leanne's history as both a mother and as a person. So to start things off, I want to take a look at who she is as a mother by examining how she raised Eric Cartman, South Park's biggest monster. Now, I'm no Cody Schwab, I'm no Chris Chan, I'm no expert on moms or anything, but the first impression I got from Leanne Cartman is that she really loves Eric a lot. And that's just always felt obvious from the way she acts around him. Always going out of her way to do things for him, reacting with genuine concern when he's in serious trouble, and the general way that she seems to overlook many of his negative qualities because that's her little poopsikins.
My little Poopsikins is a very good little boy.
In the early seasons, Leanne is very much love blind when it comes to Eric. She always sees the best in him, and because of that, she's predisposed to spoiling him and allowing him to get his way. But unlike most mothers, she takes this to the extreme by doing things for Eric that no mother should ever be doing. I'm talking things like making him a Hitler costume for Halloween, entering him into the Special Olympics, or the poop pan thing from the World of Warcraft episode. Usually I'd cut to a clip here, but I just find that scene way too disgusting, so I have this other example of her spoiling Eric instead.
Every time somebody gets a birthday present, Eric gets one too. Otherwise, he gets a little upset.
Oh, cool Legos. Thanks, Butters.
Here you are, Muffin.
Yay! Oh, cool. Look, a Ben 10 wrist rocket. This is exactly what I wanted for Stan's birthday.
Leanne is in every possible way an enabler for Eric, and it's because of her enabling that Eric grows to have so many personality issues as the show continues. He's narcissistic because at home, both of their worlds revolve around him. He's a manipulative psychopath because she always caves when he plays to her emotions, which he does a lot when he wants to get his way.
Who's got the greatest mom in the world? I do. My mom is #1 in my heart. It's true. My mom's the best mom, better than your mom. Let's sing it together in harmony.
Hell, I've even heard people argue that Eric is as racist as he is because of her. Though as far as I can tell, he learned that behavior elsewhere, she maybe just kinda enables it. But the thing is, Eric's horrible tendencies aren't just enabled by Leanne because she loves him so much. While that is a reason for spoiling him, it's not her most important one. Because in reality, Leanne enables Eric's worst qualities because she has a codependent relationship with him, which is something that we first really learn about in the season 10 episode, Tss.
Give me some chicken. I want some chicken, Mom.
We won't reward him until he's in a calm, submissive behavior.
God damn it, I am not a dog. Give me a chicken. Give me the chicken. I want the chicken. Chicken. Give me the chicken. Give me the chicken. Give me the chicken. Give me the chicken.
See, in this episode, with the help of dog trainer Caesar Milan, Leanne comes to realize how her actions have enabled Eric to become such an out-of-control kid. But with Caesar's advice, and by treating
With that being said, if you're ever having any issues out of any of your friends, family, siblings, especially your children, you just gotta like, you know what I mean? Like this, like make the snake sound and like stab them with your 2 fingers. From what he says, that fixes it. I don't.
treating him like a dog, she actually manages to put Eric on a better path. He begins to treat her with respect, he becomes more responsible and well-mannered, but it doesn't last very long. And that's because Leanne sabotages her own success. And the reason why she does it helps us understand why Eric became the kind of monster that he is. Towards the end of the episode, Leanne begins to develop feelings for Caesar and asks him out on a date. But Caesar doesn't feel the same way about her. He rejects the offer, pointing out that their relationship is strictly professional. And in response, this is how Leanne reacts.
Eric, how would you like to go with me to see Madame Butterfly Friday night?
No, that's okay. Besides, I told Stan and Kyle we could work on our science project then.
Well, what if I took you to Kentucky Fried Chicken afterward? And then we'll go to Target and I'll buy you a Mega Ranger.
Could I perhaps have 2 Mega Rangers?
Yes, darling. You can have whatever you want.
My God, it turns out that Leanne was the real monster all along. Nah, but this is our first real insight into why Leanne spoils and enables Eric as much as she does. Because when she's faced with that rejection, she turns to Eric to
But that's just a theory. A game theory. That's the tone of voice he was using. I swear that dude watches Matt Pat.
fill the void that would otherwise be filled by a husband or a father. And you know, something about Caesar Milan was acting like a father figure to Eric by disciplining him or whatever. The point is that Leanne turns to Eric because she knows that he won't leave her as long as she gives him what he wants. So to keep him around and to keep that void filled, she happily caves to his every whim and fosters their codependent relationship, which means that ultimately, her lack of boundaries as a mother is a selfish decision. She's doing it for herself, not for Eric. But as I mentioned earlier, this doesn't last forever. As the series goes on, she begins to change and starts establishing the boundaries that their relationship has been missing. Though that's not to say that she had 0 boundaries to begin with, because we do see examples of them even in the early seasons of the show. Like there's that one line from the pilot episode,
I think you need to spend time with your little friends.
Wait, Mom, I don't want to spend time with my little
Don't be difficult, Eric.
or other things like when she smacks Eric for embarrassing her at church, or how she sends him away to fat camp. And of course, my personal favorite, the time that he got grounded in season 8.
Actually, Eric is still supposed to be grounded for trying to exterminate the Jews 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Excuse me, I didn't catch that. Oh, but I suppose it would be good for him. Yes, of course he can go.
Yeah, she kind of caved on that one pretty quick, huh? Maybe that wasn't the best example. But somewhere around season 14 and onward, Leanne really starts to put her foot down with Eric in ways she never would have before. For example, in the Coon and Friends trilogy, she's quick to ground him for using bad language.
Eric, you do not beat up your friends, and I told you I've had it with your language. Your punishment is that your friends will just play superheroes without you. Go to your room.
You gotta be kidding me!
There's also the time she gets really pissed at him in Human Sentai Pad.
Please, can we just go back and get the Toshiba handy book?
No!
This one gets bonus points from me because she also finally doesn't fall for his manipulative, innocent child routine.
Oh, wait, I get it now. The F word is a no-no word, and I shouldn't say it around other people. I'm sorry, Mama.
If you're really sorry, then you'll understand why you aren't getting anything.
As of the present date, Leanne has matured into a much more well-rounded and strict mother who is willing to lay the law when Eric is getting out of hand. These days, she stands her ground when Eric is misbehaving, and she calls him out on his bluffs in order to establish that she holds the power in their relationship. Like, for example, when Eric doesn't want her to get a job in City People. She refuses to back down until her life is literally on the line. And when she has no choice but to quit, she uses the situation to her advantage by forcing him to experience the consequences of the poverty it forces upon them.
Weak. I live in a hot dog.
Another great example would be from the South Park special Streaming Wars, when Eric wants her to get breast implants in order to seduce a wealthy man that could help move them out of their hot dog house. God, I love that I get to say sentences like that for a living. She refuses the surgery without any hesitation, even though Eric had already raised the funds for it. And when Eric threatens to get the breast implants himself, she calls his bluff.
Okay, well, now that you see how serious I was, what are you gonna do now?
I'm going to go down and get some grocery shopping done.
Mom,
Aww.
I will go to school like this. You're gonna have to give it at some point.
This version of Leanne is a far cry from the person we knew in the early seasons of South Park. Back then, not only would she have probably gotten the surgery, but she would have also been all over the idea of using sex to make more money. But today, she refuses to do it because she's changed as a person. However, by this point in the series, Eric has already bloomed into the evil little psychopath that we all know and love. And because of that, he is constantly wreaking havoc upon the town, despite her new and improved ways. Which only means that this change in behavior from her is quite literally too little too late. And for that reason, many people would argue that Leanne doesn't deserve to be redeemed. The consequences of her actions are simply too great, and ultimately, you reap what you sow. But what these people never seem to talk about is how tragic Leanne's life really is. And maybe this is just because I'm a sensitive little bitch, but I believe that when you take an empathetic look at everything she has gone through, it's much more difficult to feel justified in making that claim. Which is why it's time for another segue sentence thingy, because now I want to dive into the real story behind Leanne Cartman and why her life is a tragedy. Who is Cartman's mother? Is she a bad parent? A tortured soul? The Babylonians? You know, it's funny, Cartman's mom is easily one of the most prominently featured parents in all of South Park, but if you think about it, not much is actually known about her. Well, except for the fact that she's a whore.
I found it! I found it! What? See, Cartman? Your mom is on the cover.
Crackle. Oh.
Yes, throughout the early seasons of South Park, Leanne had quite the reputation, mostly because Leanne is named after Trey Parker's ex-fiance, who cheated on him a month before their wedding, like the dirty horse she is.
I was engaged to this girl, Leanne, who we were sort of high school sweethearts, and we were supposed to get married, and we were engaged for a year. Everything, friends had plane tickets, the dress was bought, the church was paid for, and about a month before the wedding, she decided to start sleeping with this guy in an a cappella group.
But character inspirations aside, Cartman's mom was initially known for being a whore, making money from porn and prostitution, and being addicted to crack, which was a reputation so infamous that every kid and parent in town seemed to know about it.
For instance, your mother is a chemist for a pharmaceutical company, whereas your friend Eric Cartman's mother is a crack whore.
But let me ask you this. Have you ever thought about why Leanne became a crack whore? I'm gonna guess that for 90% of you, the answer is probably no. And for the other 10%, the answer is probably autism. But me, I get paid to think too much about South Park, so I have thought about why Leanne turned out the way she did. And though the show has never done a deep dive into her origins, in my opinion, the answer comes from the glimpses we get of her family.
For you, Eric, I leave from my life savings the sum of $1 million to be transferred to you immediately.
Who's a jigga what?
Eric is the primary benefactor of my estate, since it is likely the rest of you would spend the money on crack.
Oh my.
We know from the episode Merry Christmas, Charlie Manson that Leanne doesn't come from the best family. I mean, they seem fine enough in the few interactions we see of them, but we also know that her parents, siblings, and cousins are all either dim-witted, criminals addicted to crack, or all of the above, which means that Leanne likely formed her crack habit as a result of her family. And while that doesn't paint us a full picture of her childhood, it stands to reason that her entire family has these negative traits because of how they were raised, or at least that's the most likely explanation. Because as we've established, Eric was capable of changing for the better when Leanne handled him correctly. So, given that her family is very similar to Eric, it stands to reason that they could have turned out differently under better circumstances. Now, why is this important? Well, because it means that Leanne probably grew up without any context for what good parenting is supposed to look like. She didn't have a good mother or father to model herself after, which is why she immediately fails to be a good mother herself once she has Eric. And what I think you're seeing in those early seasons are her misguided attempts at being a good mother. But Leanne didn't live with her family in Nebraska forever. She eventually moved to South Park and made a new life for herself all on her own. But what's incredibly sad about this is that all these years later, Leanne is still on her own when it comes to adult relationships. I mean, yeah, she has lots of sex, but she has no romantic partners. And though she does get invited to certain group situations, she doesn't seem to actually be friends with anyone in any of those groups. Like, sure, we see her with the parents of the other boys sometimes, but only when the gathering is centered around their kids, like a birthday party or if the kids are getting into some kind of trouble. We never actually see her with the other adults when they're just hanging out, and none of them seem to even be on a first name basis with her, always referring to her as Miss Cartman.
Hello, Miss Cartman. It's Sharon, Stan's mother.
Aside from her son Eric, Leanne Cartman has been alone ever since she moved to South Park. And after 10 plus years of living that way, I think she might just be one of the loneliest people in the entire town. I mean, just think about how tough it would be to live that way. As humans, we crave relationships and social interactions. That's why in prisons we use isolation as a form of punishment, because isolation causes suffering. So my theory is that Leanne slept around so much because she was trying to make up for the lack of companionship in her life, because those are the only times that she's not alone. But theories aside, what is apparent is that she used her promiscuity for good.
I love that song, Mom. Sing it again.
No, honey, Mommy's gotta save her throat. I have to work tonight.
Okay.
By being a sex worker, Leanne was able to provide her son with a very good life. I mean, they may not have as much money as the Marshes or the Broflovskis, but all in all, she did well. Certainly better than Kenny's family did, and they were doing it in a two-parent household. So being a whore may not be the most glamorous career, but there's something admirable about the fact that she used it to provide for her son, that she always made him her top priority, even if she didn't always do her best at hiding it from Eric.
Ma'am,
Yes, hon?
if you were in a German Scheiße video, you'd tell me, right?
Sure, hon. Good night.
Now, we've talked about how she formed a codependent relationship with her son, because he's the one thing that sort of saves her from that loneliness, and she uses him to fill a void that would otherwise be filled by a proper companion. And we've also talked about how this led to her enabling the monstrous tendencies inside him. But what we haven't talked about is how being Cartman's mother has subjected her to judgment from the other people in South Park.
Don't you people criticize me until you've taken Eric to the doctor and you've tried to hold him down. I'm a good mother. Don't you dare question if I care about my child.
Now, I'm not saying that it's unfair of them to judge her. Eric Cartman is a fat little piece of shit, and I'd probably dislike anyone responsible for his existence too if I lived in the show. But I think that it's important to recognize that judgment of that kind comes with consequences. Because if nothing else, it only serves to further her isolation from everyone else in town, which means that she's essentially robbed of any chance at having a real support system as a single mother. Now, that's already difficult enough on its own, but she's not just any single mother, she's the single mother to a psychopathic demon child that has attempted multiple genocides.
Now, let the extermination begin!
Now at this point, I think it's worth pointing out that Leanne's enabling of Eric is not the only reason that he's so f***ed up. To be this extremely bad, it's gotta be a mixture of nature and nurture, not just one or the other. But because Leanne is blamed for all of it, she ends up stuck in this vicious cycle. Her loneliness leads to her being codependent with her son, but being codependent with her son leads to being ostracized for raising such a bad kid. So basically, this all just pushes her back into isolation and towards reinforcing that unhealthy relationship. But Leanne, sweet Leanne, is actually super Omega based, because instead of doing what anyone else would do, instead of doubling down on her codependent relationship, she systematically improves herself. She stops being a whore and gets 2 regular jobs to support her kid.
Eric, I'm working 2 jobs. Mommy's doing everything she can.
She also stops doing crack at around the same time.
Got any needles on you? Any crack pipes?
Oh my goodness, no. I haven't used drugs in quite a while.
Eventually, she stops giving in to Eric's bullshit altogether and begins setting the boundaries that he always needed, which is something she had to learn to do all on her own. So you see, despite the bad hand that Leanne was dealt in her life, she's shown the most positive growth of any character in all of South Park. And while it's true that she didn't improve in time to set Eric on the right path, and that it is her fault that his inner monster has flourished, It wasn't from a lack of trying. It was because she had more to overcome as the child of a poorly raised family.
That kid was gonna be a monster regardless. Eric Cartman is unsalvageable.
To do everything all on her own in a town that she wasn't even from. A town that she has always been nice to, but that chose to cast judgment on her instead of offering a helping hand in her time of need. That is the tragedy of Leanne Cartman. The life of a woman who had to struggle through isolation and single parenthood, but that did it with a smile on her face the entire time. That did it as the nicest person in town. That is why Cartman's mom is one of the best characters on South Park, and why she deserves her redemption.
I didn't know she was getting her freak on like that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to comment, like, and or subscribe. It's your boy BlastphamousHD. Twisms.